Welcome to another episode of Meta on Demand. Today I'm talking to Nicky Merrick, who is a coach for dance costume makers who want to take their business further. And I wanted to speak to Nicky because I know that she's pivoted her businesses a few times in response to her own personal circumstances. And then, like many business owners, she had another change in the last few months in response to COVID. So we've got lots to talk about today. Welcome, Nicky. Thanks for coming on.
Hi, thanks for asking me to be here.
So first of all, how did you end up being a coach for dance costume makers?
Oh gosh, so the long story of my business travels is quite extensive, but to condense it into a brief answer, I was originally an event photographer, and we're going back to 2007, so we're going back quite a way. And over time, things changed. So starting with, I fell pregnant and got diagnosed with MS, so big change, I couldn't do that anymore. So I started selling online, making baby clothes, rainbow coloured, gender neutral stuff. Ended up making more clothes and selling clothes online. And then a friend asked me if I would make a dance costume for her daughter. She was a competitive pole dancer, competing at quite a high level. And I was like, yeah, I'd love to. I'd been a dancer as a kid, and I'd always designed my own costumes, but never had a chance to make one. So I really wanted to have a go at this. And so I did it anyway. I wasn't thinking of doing it as a business, but all her friends loved her costume and started, oh, where did you get that from? And before you know it, I was booked up 6 months in advance. And for the last 3 years, I've been making mainly pole dance costumes, but also aerial costumes, for aerial silks and trapeze and that kind of thing. And with the MS getting worse, with it being a progressive condition, and I've got secondary progressive now, so I don't get any remittance, it's just all pretty much downhill. I was struggling to meet the demand. It was great that I had the demand, but I was struggling to meet it. And so I still wanted to be working, still wanted to be busy. And I thought I could help other dance costume makers. With it being something that people often do as a hobby, they often don't charge correctly, or they don't charge their worth. So people do it just for the cost of materials. And I want to help people really make a business from this and actually earn a proper income instead of just subsidising their hobby.
Wow, so that's a lot you've had to change in a not a huge amount of time, because your son's 11, so that's in just over 10, 11 years, you've been through quite a lot. I just want to take right back to the beginning. So your MS diagnosis, was that during pregnancy?
Yeah, so it was sort of at the beginning and end. It happened all at the same time. So I still remember it so well. One evening I did a pregnancy test. Yay, pregnant. The next day I'd had an MRI 2 weeks previous, and the next day my neurologist phoned up and went, yeah, you've got swelling on the brain, I'll see you soon. I'm like, what? And he was like, oh no, don't worry, because this condition, he didn't mention MS at that point, he said this condition goes away during pregnancy. I'm like, oh, so that's okay then. Not. And they had to wait till after I'd had my little boy before they could do a second MRI. So you have to have 2 MRIs to compare the progression of the lesions on your brain. So it wasn't until after I had him that they diagnosed me when I was 31. And they now actually know that I've had it since I was 13. I was misdiagnosed for a long time. I've been ill for a long time.
Wow. And so you were having to raise a baby, and were you also needing to make some sort of income at the same time? Or were you able to take a break from work?
The income wasn't too critical. So my husband, Chunky, he was earning, and so he was earning the majority of what we needed. There's 3 other kids as well, so they're not biologically mine, but I've raised them as my own because they don't have their mum. So yeah, getting Zed along with 3 teenagers all at the same time, and MS, babies, teenage angst. Yeah, there's a lot going on. Oh, we moved house in the middle of it as well. And
you decided to start making clothes in the middle of all of that because?
Yeah, well, I could quite easily, legitimately not work. I could claim whatever benefit there is for people who are not able to work. I've been told I'm entitled to all the help going, but I can't do that. I need to be busy. I need to be doing things. So throughout pregnancy, because I was an event photographer when I fell pregnant, I used to set up a full stand at a big event at like pagan festivals, biker rallies. I did a fairy festival. All those sort of places, anything a bit alternative. I was like the alternative photographer. And I would set up my market stand, and I'd have my camera, my studio lights, my backdrop all on stands, and I'd have my printer, and I'd print stuff while I was actually there. And that's quite physical. And so there's no way I could do that. So while I was pregnant, and I was on bed rest for 17 weeks with a separate issue, I had symphysis pubis dysfunction, so my hips were out of line. So 17 weeks with the laptop in bed, reorganising my business into something that I could do once the baby was here. And that ended up being dyeing baby clothes in rainbow colours and gender neutral clothing. And that's what progressed to doing more clothes and like hippy dippy stuff, all a bit different.
So had you worked with clothing before? Because I can't sew a button. So it's a million miles away from me thinking, oh, wow, I'll just set up a clothing business. What background had you already got in that?
I hadn't done sewing professionally, but I could sew and design. I've always been very crafty and creative. I've got a BTEC in graphic design, and I've always done creative-based hobbies and work. So, yeah, it didn't seem that much of a progression for me to just, gradually. First of all, it was dyeing pre-made clothes. Then I thought, actually, I can make these myself. That would be better. And, yeah, it just went from there. I did a foundation degree in textiles at my local college. And that was it. By the end of it, I bought a sewing machine and I was set up and going.
And then you've been making the dance costumes for about 3 years now.
Yeah, so it'd be just over 3 years ago when I started that.
And then what did you start doing during COVID?
Well, COVID came just as I was switching from making the costumes to teaching other people about business for making their costumes. And so it was kind of good that I'd switched to a digital sort of creative business. But also my clients were all going, there's no dance costumes, there's no costumes to make. So all the content that I decided to create and to, make part of my business, I had to basically put it all on hold. And I launched a podcast in the middle of COVID. And I had to make all the content about what to do in your dance costume business during COVID. And I think the first one was like 10 things you can do in your sewing business right now during lockdown, which is still relevant even out of lockdown. I've sort of repurposed it into a blog post that isn't COVID specific. It's just 10 things you can do that don't require you to go out and actually do anything. They're not about costume making. They're about working on your costume business.
How is it looking for? So basically, there's still no dance competitions, and that's people have the costumes custom made to be able to compete, don't they?
Yeah, so it's different around the world. I've got a very small audience, being a new business. Well, I'm new in this area, not a new business. But it's very different. I've got a lot of people in America and they've got a lot of competitions already happening. Not so many in this country. In the UK, there aren't many competitions at all. Some people have done some competitions and some medal tests and that, but they don't have any audience there. There's no crowd, there's no people. And so there's a lot of deflation. People are feeling very down about it because you need that audience. You need people to see you perform. Otherwise, it's a bit like, well, what's the point,
Imagine putting all the effort into those costumes and then only having like 5 people see it.
Yeah, it's a bit of a letdown when you've got that situation. But I think some of my clients did turn towards making training gear. So they were making workout costumes rather than the elaborate ones for competitions and shows. So that was an area people could look at. But there's only so many training sets that people are going to buy. And it's not as lucrative as the costume making for competitions.
So what's your plan at the moment? Are you still going ahead with teaching other costume makers how to up-level their business and kind of hanging on in there to get to the other side of the coronavirus crisis?
Yeah, that's exactly it. I think on the whole, everyone's really positive. They're all continuing with their business. I haven't had anyone say, no, that's it, I'm giving up. Whether they just didn't let me know that that's what they're doing, that's always a possibility. But no one's sort of outright given up so far. So at the minute, I've got I'm running a beta course at the moment about how to price a dance costume. So I'm trying to do a lot of groundwork to get people to the point so that when they are able to be up and running more actively, if lockdown ends, they're in a better place business-wise to be able to implement everything that I've taught them. So it's all about pricing at the moment. It's the number one thing I get asked about, what should I charge for this? And the number one thing I say to people is stop asking other people what you should charge for it.
Yes. There's such... when I've been reading your content and kind of looking at what you're doing, there's such an overlap with the cake making profession, with the same kind of idea where people, they love to do it, so they just charge only for the materials. But then you've got then that kind of puts a lid on what people can charge because there's so many people prepared to do the work for free, and then their talent and experience is getting undervalued, they're not going to get rewarded for it. It was really like, that was something I can't relate to dance costumes because I don't know anything about dance and I don't know anything about clothing. But when I started thinking, I was like, this is like cakes and I understand cakes.
Yeah, I think anything that is creative is often something that people will do as a hobby. And as soon as you're in an area where people will do it as a hobby, you're going to get people undercutting you. And it was exactly the same with the photography business. People just would not realise what they were paying for when everyone can get a digital SLR now and go set up and be a wedding photographer. I did do a wedding, but only because it was a pagan wedding. It was a whole hand fasting thing. But no, wedding photography was never my bag at all.
You're like the opposite of people who struggle to niche. So I have so many conversations with people who, they struggle to find their target audience because they want to be, they have a skill and they want to be able to offer it to as many people as possible. And you're like exactly the opposite. I love working with these people and these are the ones that I'm going to be working with. Yeah,
it was something I learned really early on. So we used to live on the Wirral in Merseyside when I started my business. I was at university in Chester when I met Chunky, and that's how I ended up over there. And they had this company called Wirral Biz, and it was for startups. And I was like, okay, I'll go along, see what that's like. It turned out to be 8 weeks of like full-on training, and it was funded by Capital and Culture. I think 2008, Capital and Culture was in Liverpool, and being in the Wirral, they accessed part of the funding. And I had got this idea of being this photographer. And I said to one of the advisors, I'd really like to do things that are a bit different. So I'm going to be this photographer who does these kind of quirky things as well. And he went, no, scrap that. Don't be a photographer who does those things. Be the alternative photographer. And that was it. My business cards were changed before they were printed, thankfully. And it used to say the alternative photographer. That was who I was.
That's amazing.
Changed conversations. So I'm going a little bit off track here, but another photographer passed me someone else who contacted them about some work. And she said, I think this lady might be able to help you. And it turned out to be a guy who'd got a girl. He said, in fact, I don't think she actually existed. He got a dungeon, basically, in the cellar of his house. And he wanted me to photograph him doing whatever he did in this dungeon with this girl. And apparently she was in the car being taken home now because she was a bit sore. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think I can help you. I am the alternative photographer, but I'm not that.
Not that alternative. Although it's probably quite a lucrative niche to get into.
Yeah, I've got to admit, the little business brain sort of went, you could charge a lot for that. And then my common sense went, but you don't want to do that.
Something that I noticed that's in common between your businesses as well is they're quite, you have to be really brave and vulnerable to show people what you've done. So I always think with photographers like that, I find it hard to write a page of copy and go, I hope you like it. But, in the end, it's just sales copy and I can rewrite it if I need to, because I can do that as many times as it takes. If you're photographing an event and you get, and you put the photos out there and they say, that I didn't like it. Like the event has been and gone and you've blown your chance. And similarly, like you custom make dance costumes for people. So they've got an idea of what they want. They can imagine how they're going to look in it. So you put all these hours of work into it. And then you have that moment of presenting it to the client. That's like a level of bravery that I don't think I would have. But you've chosen businesses like both times that are kind of that exposing and require you to be that vulnerable. Do you have fear when you're showing someone your end product?
Yeah, I can sit and go, oh yeah, it's fine. I'm totally fearless and I just keep doing it. It doesn't matter how many years you've been doing it. I feel terrified until the moment they put the costume on and send me that picture, or if they're here with me, I see the minute and I see the big smile. And I think it makes it all worth it. I mean, even with the photography, my specialism within alternative photography was making people anyone who said, I don't like having a picture taken, that's who I wanted to photograph, because I wanted to create a picture that they could look at and go, oh my God, I never liked a picture of me in my life. And there was a trans lady who I photographed at one of the pagan festivals who was absolutely amazing. Her name was Dee, and she'd never wanted to be photographed because being trans, she felt very vulnerable in that way. And she loved the photo so much, she put it in a little 5x7 frame and actually had it in her car on the dashboard and was driving around with it in the car. She was that happy. And so for all the fear that I feel about whether or not a customer is going to like what I've done, those little moments make it worthwhile. And that's why, you know, we're 13, 14 years later, I'm still talking about it because it meant so much to me. And yeah, there's nothing like seeing someone in their dance costume sending you the pictures from the competition that they just won. And, you know, they all do a little bio that gets read out before they perform at the pole dance competitions. And hearing them include you in that tiny little bio, and they've chosen to include your name in it, it's just really special. And it's a real privilege. So I guess it just makes it worth it.
You are really part of their team, though, because like if the costume messes up or malfunctions in some way, you know, that's going to ruin the performance. But also the way that they feel inside that costume, how confident they feel, how comfortable they feel, if it like moves with them in the way, you know, it's a really integral part of their competition performance, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I think if I dwelled on that too much, the fear might overtake a little bit.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. All right, I'm not actually making them anymore. I still make a few because I like doing it, but I can't do with the pressure of having to make it for people for competitions anymore. I mean, one thing that happened actually, it was one of the last questions I made before I decided to stop. We were due to go away camping for the weekend as a family, and the lady I was making for, she lived somewhere en route to where we were camping. And there was a couple of weeks before her competition, and I could have left it and finished it the following week. And I said to my husband, I'm going to get it done and we'll drop it off on the way past. I'm always scared of costumes going missing in the post, no matter how much insurance you put on it. You can't do anything. Even if they pay you back the money, you can't recreate it for them. So we dropped it off for her, went camping, and I ended up in A&E because I started going blind. And that's a symptom of MS. It's called optic neuritis, and it's just something that happens. And my sight came back, but it took 3, 4, maybe 5 months to fully get my eyesight back. Now, if I'd have not finished her costume before I went away, I'd have had to contact her and say, I'm sorry, I can't make your costume. I can't finish it in time for your competition date. And they had chosen their music based on their costume, and the whole thing is centered around the costume, the music, and the choreography all has to flow and go together. I couldn't do that to people, so that's when I stopped making for people in that way. I did try making and just selling what I'd made, but everyone always said, oh, I love that one, but I want it in blue, or I love that, but I did it in a different size. So yeah, it didn't really work doing it that way.
So you've taken what you have, the experience that you have, and made it work again around like the circumstances that you're facing at the moment. But you still didn't want to just stop and give up. That's what I find amazing. It's like, I think a lot of people would just think, I think I'll go to bed now for some months and take some time off. But you wanted to keep working in that environment and to create a kind of new version of your business. What is it that you get out of it that pushes you to keep doing that? Apart from money, obviously.
I don't know, really. I really don't know the answer to that. I just genuinely love what I do. I like being busy. I like being active. I've never been one to just sit around and be ill. And I guess having been ill since I was so young, I don't really know any different. If I'd have been living my life as normal and then found out or got MS, say in my mid-20s or mid-30s, it would have been like a totally different situation. Whereas although I was quite well in my 20s, the MS was quite benign. Looking back, it was always there. So because I've never known any different, it doesn't occur to me to stop. And also, it would be a bit boring to not do it.
Has there been any times where you've just thought, this isn't worth it, I don't want to run my own business anymore?
There hasn't been times where I felt I didn't want to run my own business, but there's been times where I felt I wasn't good enough. And there's definitely a lot of imposter syndrome, particularly now I've moved into the digital world of this type of business. So at times it is hard when I think I'm not good enough and I can't do it right and it's not going to plan. But generally it doesn't last very long. I'm amazingly privileged to have Chunky in my life who is so supportive of everything that I do. And it only takes a quick conversation with him and he picks me up and sets me going again. And quite often he'll go, you just need to go and lie down for an hour. And I'm like, no, I don't want to. I've got to do this and I've got to do that. He's like, Nick, go and lay down. And I go and lay down, and then half an hour later, I text him saying, yeah, I'm a bit better now away.
That's so funny because I always say like that's if I'm like that, you know, I'm useless. I can't do anything. Why do I even bother trying? Oh, I need a nap. Like that's what I need to do right now is just go take a nap and then I'll feel better.
Yeah, I fight against it so much though. I fight and fight and fight. And I'm literally like hanging on my desk, struggling to type the words. And Chuck's like, what are you doing? Just go and recuperate. It doesn't take long and then you feel better.
He sounds amazing. You should put him out for hire.
He's very busy being a truck driver at the moment. He worked in the music industry before COVID. And so there's literally no industry to go back to at the moment. He did outside events, live broadcasts, festivals. He would rig like the sound systems and the lights. He was a lighting engineer and sound engineer. And so we got to the point about 6 weeks ago where like, you're going to have to do something else. And he went, and fortunately he had his HGV license and was able to go and start driving trucks. But he's away Monday to Friday now. He doesn't come home each night. So this is incredibly hard right now.
So because you've got like the practical considerations of, you've got to take care of Zed and yourself and the home, and you're still running a business. And now also you don't have someone there to tell you to stop and take a nap anymore. So you have to be the one that tells yourself.
Yeah, well, he does it by text and phone call, telling me to go and, he checks in on me every day, a couple of times a day. I've also got a carer. I mean, I've got Ronnie, who's one of my best friends as well now. She's been my carer for over 8 years, and she comes in the week and helps with the domestic things. She does all the housework and laundry. So, yeah, it's quite nice not to have to do those things.
Because then you can save like your energy and time for having, I can see the appeal of having the business, because then you can focus your time and energy on something that you really love to do rather than just like the mundane stuff that has to get done.
Yeah, that's it. Exactly. It frees me up to be able to use what limited resources I have in terms of energy to do the things that I want to do instead of boring domestic stuff.
And this is probably worthy of a mention at this point that you home educate Zed as well, and you always have done. Has he never been to school?
No, he's never been to school. He went to a childminders briefly. There was a lady around the corner. When he was about 2 or 3, we were living in a caravan because we're renovating the listed building as well. Just to add that into the mix. I wasn't busy enough, so I thought I needed a new project. So yeah, he went there just for a little while in the week. But yeah, once he was old enough to not be in danger, once he learned that he couldn't just run off into the road or anything, then he stopped going. But yeah, he's never been to school. He would have been going to high school this year if he was in the school system. So there's little bits in me that thinks, oh, what would that have been like? Is he missing out? And you do doubt yourself. And I know you know this completely. You doubt his decision, don't you? But on the whole, it's definitely been great for him.
I think it's I think we live with double self-doubt because we're not normal in different, like in multiple ways. So like having a business that, I don't know if you found this, but there's also that tension with friends and family who love you and they mean well, but they're looking like, can't you just be normal and have a job like everybody else? Like, wouldn't you just like paid holiday and paid sick leave and a regular income? And like, no, I don't want that. And then at the same time to say, no, my kids aren't going to go to school either. And we're just like this group, and like nobody left the house. And for a while, my husband didn't have a job either. So we were just, at the start of this year, we all lived with my mum and dad because we were renovating this place. And my dad had lost his job. My husband had lost his job. I worked from home. Both the kids were homeschooled. So my mum went for her part-time job, manages stock at a supermarket. She was the hero that left the house. And we'd like all wave her off going like, bye, have a good day at work. We're all just going to stay indoors now. So
it's like, isn't it?
It's like we're doubly weird because we don't conform in so many ways. But I don't know if you found this, because I already wasn't conforming by not having a job, and I made that weird decision to be self-employed, it made it so much easier to not conform and take the kids out of school. And I knew that there would be that initial kind of worry and panic and resistance from people that, you know, they meant well, they loved us, they cared about us, but they were not going to immediately agree with what we were doing. But I knew that we'd get to the other side of that because I thought I've done this once before, so I can do it again. So it's double the pressure, but it's also like with practice, you get better at just ignoring other people and doing what you want to do.
Absolutely. I mean, before we started educating Zed, I was at the point where anything that I said like that, friends and family would just go, oh yeah, that's expected of Nicky now. And a family member did actually say when she heard I was home educating, it's like, well, yeah, you know, it's Nicky, that's what she would do. I didn't expect any less, you know. So yeah, it is doubly weird. But I think I've always been on the fringe of mainstream, you know, with everything. So it's not really that unexpected when I announce that I'm homeschooling or that I'm running my own business or that I'm flitting off to do something somewhere else. It's just normal.
It's nice that you set that expectation among the people that care about you, so you can just basically do whatever you want now, and there's going to be no shock or backlash from it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, get in there early with it. And I think I've always been a bit different my whole life. So So yeah, it's not too big a deal when I announce my next project.
So I think I know what the answer to this question is going to be, but I ask everyone anyway. If you think back to that person, so if I take you back to when you knew life was going to change, so you're having a baby and you've been diagnosed with this condition, but you decided you're going to have a business anyway. If you think back to that person and she could see what you're doing now, would she consider that you've made a success of it?
Yeah, I think so. I've always tried to live my life without having regrets. There's no point regretting what we've done. Excuse me, you have to edit that bit out. I can feel a cough coming.
Just leave a little gap for Jonathan to edit it. It's fine. I'll take a sip of water while we do it.
Yeah, me too, actually. Whenever I cough, I'm always like, you feel obliged to go, it's not a COVID cough.
I know.
You have to add that.
If I talk too much out, like at any time, my throat gets really dry and I'll start a dry cough, and my son's looking at me like, you've got the plague. He knows that I'm not ill. He just thinks everyone else thinks that I'm ill, and it's just too awkward, so we just don't go anywhere, basically.
Yeah. So
okay.
You're talking about, I think I know where we were. Yeah.
I didn't ask what you had in mind when you're first. So if I ask a different question first, and then we'll come back to that one.
Yeah,
that's all right. So when you were first starting out and deciding you were going to be self-employed, which was around the same time as you first became a mum and you were dealing with the diagnosis of a chronic condition. So it's quite a lot to take on. You went self-employed before that?
It was about 3 years in between starting self-employment and becoming pregnant.
Because you were the photographer for alternate events. Okay, so when you started out like that, did you have in mind what success would look like? When would you go, I've made it, it was all worth it?
No, I didn't at all. I don't think I even thought about it. I think it stems from my illness. So as a teenager, I used to have temporary paralysis. So I'd be in hospital almost every month. The first time it happened, I was 13. I didn't know if I would ever walk again. And that sounds really dramatic now, and I can be quite flippant about it because obviously I know what happened. But I did walk again. But I decided back then to make the most of every opportunity, to take every chance I got to do something, I would do it, because I understood, I'd learned that lesson of putting things off till tomorrow and always thinking that opportunity would be there. I knew what it was like to think that was it, this is the end, this is my life over now. So that gave me this kind of lust for life that really made me want to experience everything and do everything. And it has led to me doing some amazing things. You know, I've been around the world, I've travelled a lot, I've played rugby in Australia, I've been a motorcycle courier, I've been a grouse beater in the Highlands, I've worked on a canal boat on the Thames, you know, and I don't think I would have done all these things had I not been ill. You know, I don't regret being ill in any way, but it also means that I don't put too much emphasis on what I want to achieve to be successful. For me, the fact that I'm still here doing this is a success, and that's good enough for me, I think.
That's really interesting, because one of the things I struggle with is enjoying what we've got right now, but always having this drive for what's the next thing. So wanting to work for it. And especially in the beginning, I remember this fear that I'd worked so many hours towards something, and what if I don't get there? And I could have spent those hours with my kids, or I could have spent that time differently. Do you ever have that fear that you're is this the right thing to be investing my time in? Because it sounds like you're really present and attuned to what you're doing right now is the thing you want to be doing.
Yeah, I think I am quite present in what I'm doing, but no one can be perfect all the time. So yes, those bits of doubt, the element of doubt and consideration about whether it's the right thing or not, that still creeps in. I just think when you look at it on the whole, I tend to be quite proactive at just moving forward in whatever moment I'm in, rather than worrying about what I should be doing or how I could improve the situation. But yeah, it still creeps in every now and then. You still get those feelings.
And you're still able to to progress, and you're still moving forward, and, your business is growing and you're still achieving new things, even though you're not in that kind of state of striving and reaching for something in the future all the time.
Yeah, I get a bit fascinated. It's funny you should ask about this, because I see a lot of other business people and always talking about these goals and striving to do this, striving to be better, to grow this. And I'm like, I'm just quite happily plodding along. I don't make loads of money. I don't have thousands of people in my audience and on my email list, but I'm happy and I love what I'm doing, and it's enough. And I think it's just learning to accept that what you have is enough, and you don't always need more. You still need a bit of drive, otherwise you just stagnate and not do anything. But I suppose it depends what's your target in life, what means the most to you. And for me, it's just to keep doing what I'm doing and to continue having the freedom that I've got. That's what's important to me. It doesn't mean that other people are wrong. It's just the way I do it.
I think you have something that lots of people want, though, which is that feeling of enoughness, of like, it's okay, I'm going to stop work today because I've done enough, or, it's good enough where I am, rather than this feeling like no matter how much we achieve, there was always something left on the table. There's always potential to be achieving more or earning more or doing more. So it sounds perfect. It sounds like bliss to me.
I suppose I should be a bit more inject a bit of realism. It sounds perfect, but it isn't always, because I have the little voices telling me that I shouldn't be like this, that I should be striving to do more. And those little doubting Dora. Is it doubting Dora?
Doubting Dora. I've not heard that, but I like that.
She creeps in and, makes me question what I'm doing. But I think if I didn't have the supportive network that I've got, if I didn't have Chunky being an amazing husband, Ronnie being my carer, I've got 3 adult children that are incredibly supportive and helpful. They don't live at home anymore because they're all in their 20s and with their partners and whatnot. But Zed's an amazing, supportive little guy. He's only 11, but he does so much to help. Interestingly, he doesn't do anything to help when his dad's home. And Chunky, it seems really unfair. But he's been like this since he was very little. The moment his dad's there, he's just a regular kid. But if his dad's away, it's like he's a few years older and he does so much more to help. But his dad never gets to see it. He has to take my word. But without that kind of support and that network of people encouraging me to continue what I'm doing, I don't think I could do it. I couldn't do it all on my own. Definitely.
So I think I know what the answer is going to be, but I do ask everyone this anyway. If you were to think back to that person who first decided to go self-employed and was going to the free subsidized training session and being told you are going to be the alternate photographer, if she could see what you've done over the last 15 years or however long it's been, would she think that you'd made a success of it?
I think so, because my definition of success is to just still be here doing my thing. I never had massive goals and I never knew where it was going to take me. I fell into self-employment kind of by accident. I'd always liked the idea. It sounded like something really cool that I would like to do, but I didn't think it was an option to me. I didn't think I had the necessary skills. I didn't finish school. I wasn't qualified in anything. I went to university, but only because I got fed up with people assuming I was stupid, because I'd never sat a GCSE. I didn't have any qualifications. So yeah, I went to uni. I just got in by writing a letter asking if I could come. But I think they let you in as a mature student. You don't always need those entry requirements. So I did that. I've lost my train of thought a little bit, so I might have to edit that bit if it doesn't.
I think you were saying how, so we're imagining your former self as you're starting your photography business and you're looking at what you've managed to achieve so far. What does she think about that?
Yeah, so if myself from back then was looking at what I'm doing now, I think she'd say, yeah, go on, that's good. You've done a lot of different things. That's great. Don't worry about it if it's not what you set out to do. You've done all the stuff anyway, and it doesn't really matter.
So even though you're not like a goal setter or striving, excessively striving towards the future, you must have some idea of what's next for you in your business.
No. I wish I had a better answer than
that. Okay, what's happening in the immediate now for your business?
So I know that right now I want to launch series 2 of my podcast, because I've done series 1, had a break. That's why I did series, because I knew that I would need to have those breaks. So I've got an idea of what I want that to be about. And I know that I've got my pricing course, which I've sold the beta test in places. I wanted 10 people on the beta course to iron it all out and get it where I wanted it. So I've got an idea what I want that to look like. I'm teaching it live while the beta testers go through it. But eventually I want it as a pure download product. I'll probably still be active like in the Facebook group and to help people with questions, but I don't want to be delivering it live. Mm-hmm. I want it to be something that just ticks over, because I know that my health is going to get worse. I know that there's going to come a time where I can't do anything. So I'm already in a wheelchair. I've been in a wheelchair for several years now. And so I've had to change to adapt to that. So it seems daft to have too many goals of what I want to do, because I just don't know what life might be like next week or tomorrow. So it just makes sense for me not to have long-term goals. It goes against everything anyone says, doesn't it?
It kind of is, but you are still having them to an extent, in that you're engineering a business to make the business as sustainable for as long as it can be, so that, you know, while you're well enough, you can dip in, even if that means dipping in and out, and, you know, doing a little sprint of marketing while you feel like you're able to, and then like enjoying the sales that come in off the back of that, so you can just jump in and out of the business. So even though you say you don't plan for the future, that is showing, you know, a good deal of planning and foresight into creating a business that's going to work for you.
Yeah, definitely. When you put it like that, that is my goal, just to still be here, you know, to still have a business, to still be active, to still be doing my thing for as long as possible. That is my goal. So yeah, that's my answer now.
And how's the beta test going with your course?
Well, it literally just sold last week, so we haven't started yet. I'm just starting to put the course materials together, and the group are getting to know each other. I deliberately only wanted 10 people because I wanted them to really get to know each other. I wanted to get to know them and their business so that I can give them answers and help that is really relevant to where they're at and what they're doing. And they're from all over the world, so the time zones are going to be interesting. I've managed to get New Zealand, America, Australia, UK, Belgium within 10 people.
That's amazing.
All of them are from Missouri.
Did they all know each other?
No.
Oh, that is really strange.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? But they're all like, oh yeah, I'm from here. I don't know how big Missouri is, but you know, it's bigger than where I'm from. So yeah, they don't know each other. It's just one of those happenstance things.
And what's the goal of the course? What does it teach them?
It teaches them how to price a custom dance costume. So there's a spreadsheet that's included in it, and I teach them how to use that spreadsheet so that they can itemize everything that it costs to make a dance costume. And I think the trap that a lot of costume makers fall into is they list the components of the costume, so the fabric and the notions and the extra bits, the beads, the crystals. Excuse me. So they'll list all the things that are needed to make the costume. Sorry, it's really bad. So they'll list all the things that they need to make the costume. So they'll list the fabric and the crystals and all the components, and then go, all right, and I need paying for my time. But they forget to include the power and the lighting and the gas and electric to heat their studio, the repair and maintenance of their sewing machines. And there's this huge crossover between what is a hobby and what is business, because they might have come to start a business with a sewing machine that they had as a hobby. And is that a business thing? Should my personal life pay for it, or should the business pay for it? And so it's ironing out all those little things and then introducing them to the scary things like insurance and all the, you know, tax and all the things that we try and ignore as business owners because it's not the fun stuff. And
that's what keeps it as a hobby, isn't it? That it's so scary to look at having to get insurance and do proper accounts that it's easier to just say, oh, I just do this for fun. Like, God, just give me the money for the materials.
It is. But I tend to tell people, and I've done this for years, even before the costume making, being in the creative sector, I tell anyone who's doing that, if they're being a weekend warrior, that you're damaging the industry that you want to be part of. Because if you keep knocking things out for the cost of materials, you're creating an environment where people can't exist as a business, which means the quality of products in that area will go down and it will destroy that business. So I'm quite harsh when I say that to people, but I want them to take it seriously.
Yeah,
and I want insurance.
You're telling them what they need to hear and making them take it from a hobby into a money-making business, a sustainable money-making business. Because the other risk is that you'd start doing something because you love it. And I've seen this so many times. You start doing it because you love it. And then because you're not charging enough, really quickly, that gets old really fast. And then you don't love doing it anymore. And not only do you not have a business, but you don't have a hobby either because you've fallen out of love with it. So you're preserving their love for what they do as well.
Yeah, that's a nice way of putting it.
Thank you so much for your time today, Nicky. Where can people go to find out more about you and your business?
Best way to find me is at the website, which is pinkgiraffe.co.uk. So pink the colour and giraffe the animal with the long neck. And if they go to pinkgiraffe.co.uk, all my social tags and links are on there.
Which is your social platform that you hang out the most on?
Probably Instagram version on Facebook. Instagram is so visual, it's brilliant for costume making, but Facebook is just so accessible that, you know, people tend to be there more frequently. So yeah, somewhere between the two.
But Instagram's a good place to go and gaze at your pretty photos.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you so much for your time, Nicky. And thanks for watching this episode of Meta On Demand. I'll be back with another episode next week. Bye.
Thanks, Laura. Bye.